carry the 1, regroup the 5, and we'll try Pythagorean's theorem here, and we'll double that with the Fibonacci sequence. Oh, hello. Hi. I'm just sitting here trying to calculate how I can tell if my relationship is successful, and if it's going to turn the most return to me if I invest the most in it. So there's a lot of equations here, and there's a lot of different things I'm trying to figure out. I'm using the Fibonacci sequence at one point. Pythagorean's theorem, always a good one. But I'm determined to figure it out. And if you are, then stay tuned, because that's what we're going to be talking about today on this episode of Embrace the Opposite. So hey guys, welcome to another episode of Embrace the Opposite, the place where you can go to learn how to be swell, the best spouse who ever lived. That's what we're shooting for, guys. That's what we're going for. So before we get into the video today, guys, and you saw the intro, so you know we're going to be talking about how to calculate, how to know whether our relationship is successful. A couple things. If this is your first time here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the little bell so you get the little rings and notifications when I upload a new video. If you've been here before, thank you. Continue to watch and go ahead and like and comment and share. I would really appreciate it. So a couple things about calculating and understanding how do we know if our relationship is successful. One is that it's never taught. There's nobody that we go, you know, we travel through school, through our schooling, and then we figure out how to handle and how to gauge and how to know whether our relationship is successful. It's just not taught. The other thing is there's so many different ways and so many things out there in our society that has a metrics on how you measure whether you're being success. In your job, you probably have one. You know, the temperature, the weather, the stock market, everything has a gauge of when it's doing well and when it's not. And I feel like relationships should have that as well. I mean, I really believe that it's the lack of that gauge or that metrics that causes many relationships to fail. If we knew that we were trending in a way that was leaning to revenue and business or success, then we could know what we need to do for a plan of attack to continue on that pathway. Or if we're going in the opposite direction, if your stock is going down, then you know how to change it, what we can do to change it to build it back up. A relationship is so important, involving you and your life partner, and I really don't understand why we don't have a metrics, a comprehensive way of measuring that. But there's not one out there. But what we're going to try to do today is narrow in on what we can look at in our relationship to really tell if we're being successful. How do we really get into that and understand it? So the first one's going to be self-analysis and insight. Really, you want to get yourself in a place, and this can be done while you're in the relationship or before you enter into a relationship. Really, you want to get to a place with yourself to where you can understand and perceive the things that are your triggers. So what is it about yourself that is going to take you to a place of getting upset, getting short-tempered, treating maybe your family members if you're not in that relationship yet? Really, what are my triggers? What are the things that set me off? And then what are my coping mechanisms? What are the things that I do to come down off of that, to relieve stress and anxiety, to take some time for myself, meditate, whatever it might be, guys. We got to identify with those things, and we got to practice those things. These are the things that are going to help us when we're in the relationship. And if you're already in the relationship, you got to do a checklist, and you got to take inventory on those things in your life and your heart. For myself personally, and this is just in the last 6 months, I have this tendency to get hangry. We all know what that is. It's when you're hungry, your blood sugar is low, and you're just not thinking right. You're a little bit more short-tempered. Hangry is a real thing. When your body's hungry, what it does is it releases certain chemicals that try to supply it and try to level it off of that hunger. But those chemicals also release some of the things that cause us to be short-tempered, that be aggravated, irritated, and that can come out on our off on our partner as well. So hangry is a real thing. I know for myself, my wife will always say, like, you're hangry, aren't you? And I'll be like, yeah, I am. I need to get some food. So it's my responsibility. And I know that's kind of a funny one, but that's a real thing. I mean, that can lead to 3 or 4 really like critiques or criticisms to your partner, things that you say that you wish you could take back. Those things can happen. It can really damage and hurt your relationship. So knowing the things that set you off is very important. The other thing is, how do we choose? This is also done before you're actually in the relationship, but how we choose is a good metrics that we can base the success of our relationship on. So how you choose would be what you think about if you're not in the relationship yet. If you're in the relationship, the thought and the question is, what attracted me to this person in the first place? You know, this is huge because a lot of times we get into the relationship, we pursued that person for one reason or another, and then as we are in the relationship a little bit more, you know, long term, we find that what we were pursuing that person for, our thoughts have changed and we're not really about that anymore, or that they've changed. You know, how many times have we heard about somebody entering a relationship because that person was really successful, they were a go-getter, I wanted to be close to that, we had these commonalities, and so now it's great. And then a year, 2 years into the relationship, well, you could find that your interpretation was off on that person, or that they've hit a rut and they're no longer seeking out all these ambitious things in their lives, right? So we have to identify with really what's driving us to seek that person out, and really, and if we're getting into the relationship, what are we going to base that on? You know, for myself, when I was younger, I was seeking relationships just on what was presented in front of me, normally physical attraction, normally just sense of humor, the things that really weren't long lasting in a relationship. I'm lucky enough to be in a relationship now with my wife where there is physical attraction, there is commonality and sense of humor, but her moral compass is really something that motivates me and that encourages me and that inspires me. And so I'm trying to seek that, and every day, and I'm trying to measure up to where she's at in terms of her moral compass, her integrity, things that I really respect and admire about her. So you got to identify with that, because that's always susceptible to change in a relationship, and you have to key on what it is that got you attracted to that person in the first place. And the next one is just mutual respect or mutuality with that person. So it's really important that we develop an understanding and a consideration for that other person in all of our decisions. If we don't do that, if we lack that, if we make decisions just based on our own selfish ambition and things that we want, you're going to miss the whole idea of bringing yourself and harmonizing with another person, as well as you're going to hurt your partner. So a continual movement through your relationship where the other person feels like their voice isn't heard, like they're not involved in the decision-making process, they're not respected, that eventually is going to get old, that's going to get really stale, and it's not going to be fun for the other person in that relationship. And so you've got to have mutual respect, and you got to really seek mutuality with your partner, so that when you make a decision, you're considering that person, you're considering how that's going to make them feel, how it's going to change them, if it's a move or something, or you're seeking out a job and it's going to move you out of the state or out of your current circumstance, or maybe it's you're doing a job and it's just going to take you away from the family more hours. We always need to be looking at these things and thinking about these things, and if we can continually do this, it's going to help our relationship, it's going to help our partner feel loved and respected and valued. And then the last one is emotional stability. Guys, how many times do we get upset and we lose control, right? So, or how many times do we fall madly in love and we lose control, and we're not thinking, you know, clearly, we're not thinking with clarity about these things that I'm doing, or this other person, or trusting them. And so emotional stability is on both sides. And it's really saying that in any circumstance or situation, myself and my partner are going to be an advocate for thinking before we act, processing that information, that change, that, you know, whatever it might happen, and then we're going to act. We talked also a little bit about this last week, and a good example of this is a lot of times for us, when we are getting criticism or when somebody's saying something about us that hurts us, right? We get defensive and we put up our defenses and we talk back and we say, no, that's not true, and we can fight that with each and every argument in the book, right? So the part of this that is detrimental, and the part of this that if you're not doing it in your relationship, is going to be that you're going to act defensive, you're going to put up those blockades, and there's probably going to be this inability to be intimate with your partner, intimate emotionally. Because I'm not sharing really what's going on. I just don't like what you're saying, so I'm going to put up the blockade. I'm going to get you away. I'm going to become defensive. Emotional stability means that I can hear what you're saying, and I have no. It's not going to tear me down. I can pause. I can think about it. I can have some clarity on the idea and the topic. And if I do disagree with it, I can say that to you in a respectful manner. And I don't need to cut you down, and you don't need to cut me down. Maybe you're hurting about something and I'm not noticing it, but how do we get past that to kind of create more harmony in the relationship? And the other side of this is, you know, with emotional stability, there's always a root. Instability, rather, there's always a root. So if I'm defensive when somebody is telling me something that I don't appreciate, so when did that happen? When did I begin to feel undervalued or feel underappreciated, to where if somebody's saying something about me, I have to defend myself vigorously, and I have to make that other person feel bad about what they're saying? Emotional stability is going to allow you to take a breath, to bring that in, and to move forward, because this will happen in your relationship. Your partner will say something eventually or at some point that's going to be offensive to you, that's going to hurt you. And if two people are going to jump in that fight in the same capacity and then knock down the other person, well, then you're just going to be hitting each other's head, and you're not going to be understanding the progression and how to get past that. So really focus on emotional stability, guys. Just to kind of sum everything up, all of these things that I talked about today, you got to remember, if you're not trying to be swell, if you're not trying to be the best spouse who ever lived, if you're not out there trying to embrace the opposite, and if you're not working on these things, consciously working on these things every day with your relationship, they're not going to benefit you. This isn't something where we can just kind of float through and say, oh, okay, I'm emotionally stable, or I think about my partner and the decisions that I make. If you're not putting in the work, the relationship will expose you like none other. You know, so you got to make sure that we're actually putting in the work. Again, guys, set reminders on your phone to say, hey, on this day at this time every week, I want to think about emotional stability. I want to think about mutual respect. I want to think about why I chose the partner that I did, and how can I further that commitment that I've made. Because if we just hear these things one time and then we don't do anything about it, it's not really going to benefit us. You really got to be committed. You really got to want to be swell in your relationship, and then amazing things can and will happen when you calculate the success of your relationship. And guys, comment below. Let me know some ways that, if you're already doing this, some ways that you feel that you measure success in your relationship. These are just some things that I've been practicing and I've come up with. But I want to know from you guys. I want to hear from you guys. What are some ways that you measure success in your relationship? Is it having less fights, more intimacy in the bedroom? We laugh together more, and we watch movies, or we do things fun. What ways do you measure success in your relationship? Let's talk about it. So guys, I hope that was helpful. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Be patient, be understanding, be committed, and be swell. We'll holler at you guys next time. Peace. So if I take intimacy, and on this side, and security over here, maybe a little emotional stability, draw that on my diagram here. Oh, and then we got to watch out for hostility. And
No violence whatsoever. Cannot take violence out. We got to X that out on the equation. Let's see here. Security. All good. All good.